All right, welcome everyone. We will call the committee of the whole meeting to order. For the land acknowledgement statement, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, the culture of the Shinnebec, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared these lands and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all diverse peoples. Approval of the agenda. Recommendation is the agenda be approved as presented. Are there any additions? And mover and a seconder. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Day. Discussion. Call the vote. It's carried. All right. The declaration of pecuniary interest. Is anyone any declaration of pecuniary interest? If so, at any time you can declare. See none. Announcements. Does any member wish to make an announcement? I know Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Chair Pringle. I just wanted to take an opportunity to recognize a member of our Oxenden community, Julian Smith, who has qualified for the upcoming North American World Cup cross-country ski racing. He qualified for these races at the Nordic Canada Selection Trials in Quebec, and just recently found out this news. Julian is currently in Canmore training for the World Cup races that run now, February 9th to the 13th, and then he travels to Minneapolis to race at the U.S. World Cup later this month, February 17th and 18th. There is a fundraiser, Soup for Julian, and that's this Saturday, February the 10th at the Sawmill Trails in Hepworth from 11:30 to 1. There will be homemade soups, buns, and cookies. Vegetarian and gluten-free options, pay by donation, with all proceeds going to help Julian pay for his travel, accommodations, and race fees. And incidentally, the Sawmill Trails is where Julian got his start as a young skier. So congratulations to Julian, and if you can make it out to help support that cause, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yes, good news and good luck to Julian. Councillor Day.
Thank you. This announcement is for the farmers out there. The Grey County Experimental Acres applications have opened and closed later this month on February 23rd. I know some small farmers who have benefited from this program. It's part of the Grey County Climate Action Plan, and it aligns with the capacity building and sustainable agriculture best practices. Past projects have included things like cover cropping, silvopasture, rotational grazing systems, tarping to avoid tillage, intercropping, and so on. And more details can be found on the Grey Agricultural Services website.
Seeing none, we'll move on to hearings. Regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole be recessed to hold a public hearing for Z-11-23 for Judith and Thomas Nagel. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn and Councillor Sholes. Discussion. Call the vote. All those for. That's carried. Public meeting. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z-11-23 for the property legally described as concession 2, SCD Lot 25W, Part Lot 2, Capel Township. Madam Clerk, please advise the method in which the notice of the public hearing was given.
Thank you, Chair Pringle. Notice of this meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property, by email to all the prescribed bodies on December 13th, 2023, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgian Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Planner Michael, please proceed with the review of the application.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Application Z1124 is actually related to an earlier consent application that was heard in January by the Committee of Adjustment. That application, B1823, proposed to sever a 2.84 hectare residential lot containing 2 homes and farm buildings that are surplus to the needs of the farming operations. 53.33 hectares was retained for continued agricultural use. The zoning bylaw recognizes some and addresses some discrepancies with the provisions of our zoning bylaw, as a reduced lot frontage is required for the retained lands, reduced lot frontage of 187 meters where 200 meters is required. And also on the retained lands, we need to recognize a restriction to any future residential use because it is a surplus farm dwelling severance. And then on the severed lands, we need to recognize a reduced interior side yard setback of 10 meters and a reduced rear yard setback of 10 meters for the severed lands as well. Dropping down to my report to consultation. As the clerk noted, notice of a complete application and public hearing was circulated on December 13th to various agencies for review, as well as the residences surrounding the subject lands. Grey County Planning and Development Services provided comments on January 3rd, and they noted that the county planning ecologists have reviewed the subject application and have a comment stating that the property contains and or is adjacent to significant woodlands, significant wildlife habitat, and potential habitat for threatened and endangered species. However, Grey County staff's understanding that the proposed development will be located adjacent to the features on previously disturbed and developed lands. As such, Grey County's ecological staff, anyways, opinion that the potential impact on natural heritage would be negligible and the requirements from an environmental impact study can be waived. Grey County planning staff also noted that the property contains protection areas that are subject to the policy of the Source Water Protection Act, and they also recommended that the risk management official of the Drinking Water Source Protection Act should be tagged for comments on this application. Township staff did reach out to the Source Water Protection official, and they did not have any concerns with the application given the location of the severed lands. And then Great Salvo Conservation Authority provided comments on December 8th, and they noted no objections with the proposed consent and zoning applications, as they would not result in any impact to any areas regulated by Ontario, their regulation, Ontario Regulation 15106. We also received comments from the Ministry of Transportation, which were received after the staff reports were written. And essentially, because the property fronts onto Highway 6, Ministry of Transportation noted that that there's 2 existing access points to the proposed severed parcel, and they would want those reduced down to 1 access point. They also noted that a new, potentially new access point would need to be created for the retained lands, and that could come off either Highway 6 or Side Road 25. If it came off the side road, then MTO would not have any concerns because it's not an access highway. And they also noted that any new structural development, there's an idea that a new house may be built sometime in the future, would also require MTO permit approvals. That is the extent of the comments received thus far.
Thank you, Michael, for that. No member of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments in support or in opposition to the application. I do see that we may have the agent for the applicant, Gina Brower, representing Quista here today. carry on. All right, does council have any questions regarding the proposed application? Straightforward.
I guess it's just in regards to the MTO comments. Does that impact the details of the motion at all, or as it reads, is that covered as well?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Coburn's comments. No, the MTO comments are directed more towards the consent application. And we can address those because the consent is a provisional application with conditions, so we can include the MTO comments as a condition therein. And also the comments would be more directed towards the future construction of a new dwelling, so they won't directly impact the zoning amendment at all.
Any further questions? Not saying anything. All right, I will now call for the vote on this motion on the decision. And the motion reads that it has been demonstrated that applications at 11-23 for Judith and Thomas Nagel, which proposed to rezone the severed parcel created by application B1823 to reduce the required front lot frontage to rezone the retained lands to prohibit the future construction of any new buildings, dwellings of any type, and to reduce the side yard and rear yard setbacks for the severed lands is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement, conforms with the County of Grey official plan, and maintains the general intent and purpose for the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020.020. Subject to review and comments arising at the public meeting, it is recommended that application Z1123 be approved and amended by law be forwarded to council for adoption. Need a mover and seconder. Councilor Thompson. Councilor Day. Discussion. Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. I'll now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Coburn, Councilor Joldice. Discussion. Call the vote. Call the vote. All those in favor? This public hearing is adjourned. Thank you. All right, public input session 2024 budget. Recommendation reads that bylaw 2019-125 procedure bylaw be waived to allow for a public input session for the 2024 draft budget to be held, and that the Council of Township of Georgian Bluffs hereby moves into public input session at 5:12 p.m. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Day, Councilor Thompson. Discussion. All the vote, all's in favor. Is carried. We'll now turn this over to our treasurer, Samantha. Presentation.
Hello and welcome everyone. So I'm just going to provide some brief comments on where we are with our 2024 budget. So I just wanted to start by highlighting our timeline. This is the same timeline that council has seen a few times. So the 2024 budget timeline, we started with council talking about our 2024 budget back in July. This process has been completely available to the public, and we welcome any and all comments from the public throughout the entire process. We had our public budget survey, which was open from August to September. We also had in August our Connect and Collaborate event at Grey Roots, where one of the topics was our 2024 budget. Between September and October, staff began preparing the 2024 base budget. Base budget is your core operating budget based on the same levels and types of services that had been provided to residents in prior years. In November, we presented our base budget as well as the budget survey results, which provided the comments that were received during our survey period from the public. In December, we had our special council meeting, which was your strategic session where we prioritized 2024 capital projects and changes to any levels of services that would be provided, including some new services. In January, we had our meeting where the budget all came together. We had our base budget plus our capital and what it resulted in. So I just wanted to give a brief update from that date. So we do have a bit of a lower tier comparison here. So this includes all of the municipalities within Grey County. we have the 2023 combined residential tax rate. You will see that Georgian Bluffs has the second lowest tax rate in all of Grey County. The 294,000 assessment, that is specific to Georgian Bluffs. Other lower tier municipalities have different average assessments. I don't have that number for each and every lower tier, but Blue Mountains alone is 555,000, which is nearly double that of Georgian Bluffs. So that is something to be mindful of when it comes to taxes together. I was also able to find some information related to the most recent proposed budget increases. When we are sitting at 9.19, we're in the middle. There are some higher, there are some lower, but we're comparable to others. So here we have a brief summary of, I apologize, that should say January 30th, not 20th. What the changes were from the January 30th presentation. We added the short-term accommodations program, with a portion of this being funded from amounts that were received in 2023 and put into reserves, and another portion being funded from user fees within that year. So only a portion of that total of 65,000 project will be funded from tax levy. We added the fire prevention services and the additional ITFD contributions. Both of those would be fully funded from tax levy. We reduced the town council chamber upgrades to only be reflective of technology, no construction portion. We also reduced winter control by the 50,000 as directed. Both of those decreased the tax levy. We have deferred the Shallow Lake Dog Park and the phased in portion of the facilities master plan. Again, both of those decreased your tax levy. So your overall tax levy has decreased from January 30th to be $12,980,075. What does this mean for our residents? So I just want to highlight these amounts do not include any county or education portions. I don't have education rates will remain unchanged, but I do not know what the county rates will be, as there may be assessment tax shifts within there. So for our average single family dwelling with an assessment of 294,000, the revised budget following the January 30th presentation would result in an estimated increase in the municipal portion of property taxes of $168.86. I recognize it is very small font, but this is a list of everything that staff will be working on trying to accomplish. It is a list of nearly 50 items that we will be working on.
Thank you, Smith. Members of the public have registered with the clerk's department to provide feedback on the 2024 draft budget. Each speaker will be allotted 5 minutes to address council and will be called in order of registration. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comments regarding the 2024 draft budget. And I will start with Shauna McIver. Thank you, Ms. McIver, for your floor. Oh, you're muted. Can you hear us? No, or you're muted. So,
if you look at the button at the top right of your screen now, there's a little picture of a microphone. There you go.
there you are.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought you had muted me and I was waiting for you to unmute me. I won't take very long. I really just want to make 2 points, and I'll be very quick. One of the points has to do with the Sarawak Family Park, and I see that it's on your list of things to work on this year, and it's included in the budget. But when I went through the budget in detail, I couldn't see a dollar amount, and I couldn't see what exactly is going to be done at the Sarawak Family Park. So I just want to tell you that I'm a volunteer with Neighborhoods North. No doubt you've heard of us by now. We're an urban forest group and climate change group. We work with various other climate action groups. But about 6 years ago, Neighborhoods North, myself and 2 others from Neighborhoods North came to Georgian Bluffs and talked about the parking lot at the Sarawak Family Park and how it heated up in the summer, and would it be possible to get shade trees planted around the parking lot. And we understood at that time, as I said, this was about 6 years ago, we understood that the elected members agreed with us and that it was going to happen, but it never did happen. So, as I say, I see that the Sarawak Family Park is mentioned in the 2024 budget, but I don't know whether that means there might be some trees going in, and if so, 2024 would be our lucky year, 6 years later. So does someone want to speak to that, or should I move on to my second point?
I'll get Niall, our CEO, to speak to that.
Good evening, Shauna. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Yes, trees are included. So the work that still needs to be completed in Sarawak Family Park is we've got some landscaping work to do, benches to add. There's some topsoil that needs to come in around the sides of the trail and a bit of seed that needs to be done. And Shauna, you'll be pleased to know that trees are on the list and they will be going in this year. Earlier today, we were talking about having a little bit of an event to reopen Sarawak Park, recognizing the 6-year journey it's taken to get to the improvements. So watch this space. There will be a little bit of a ribbon cutting there at some point, but there will be trees.
Great, fantastic. I'm really happy about that. So my second point is not really about the 2024 budget, but it's about, I just want to make a point about something that will take more than a year, I'm sure, to come up on a budget. And I'm not sure where this feedback fits in, but in Neighborhoods North, we're very interested in parking lots, impermeable surfaces for parking lots. So all the concrete and all the asphalt and no clumps of trees in the parking lots. You'll be familiar with because you come in and out of Owen Sound, you know that the strip malls on both the west and the east side are really really ugly, like really ugly, full of pavement and asphalt. And they are, I guess it was the township that on the west side that allowed developers like RioCan, who own the big parking lot where Cineplex and No Frills are. I guess it was the township who said, sure, we'll sell you this land and you can clear cut the whole thing. And we won't make any agreement with you about how many trees there needs to be for every parking lot, parking space, and so on. I mean, I'm sure this was years and years ago, long before your time, but I raise it because this remains a problem in Owen Sound. These huge parking lots are not sustainable in a warming world. They act as heat sinks and they're so ugly. And as I said, the most egregious example is the one that RioCan owns up on the West Hill. They're an eyesore, and when you drive by, you think, wow, the township says that it wants to go green and be a leader in climate work, but these really stand out as problems. So I think Neighborhoods North, we think these acres of pavement should be rethought in sustainability terms because there are alternatives. So if you have a pen and paper handy, and I don't know if you do, but if you do, I'd like to give you a word. And the word I'd like to give you is eco-raster. Eco spelled E-C-O, raster, R-A-S-T-E-R. It's all one word. And that's a permeable surfaces product that was designed in Germany, but is manufactured here in Ontario. It's actually manufactured in Listowel. It's a permeable surfaces product. If Georgian Bluffs decided to investigate this and possibly put it on its infrastructure made it part of its infrastructure thinking, you wouldn't have to be shipping products from China. Its purchase would support local recycling efforts because a lot of the product is made out of recycled materials in Listowel. And this is an Ontario company. So permeable surfaces with clumps of trees need to be the default idea for parking infrastructure. This is what Neighborhoods North is going to be pushing, and we wanted to raise it even this far ahead. We're planning to arrange a time to talk with your own Georgian Bluffs climate action team about this, but we just like to put sustainable infrastructure for parking lots on the radar now. Okay, thank you very much. And congratulations to Niall Lobley. We're very pleased to see that he is the CAO. He's been a good friend to Neighborhoods North while he was the deputy. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna, for your comments and your questions and the information too. So, yeah, it's great to see that there's actually a company in Ontario that is here making manufacturing products. So that is great. I'm going to turn it over to the council here now to see if they had any questions of you before I let you go. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, Shauna. Thank you for your, Tobin, go ahead.
Just a quick thank you. I've been aware of EcoRaster for a while from a school field trip, and I've been watching my neighbor's driveway be very successful since they have installed it.
Good. Thank you.
Shauna, thank you for your time. All right, number 2 on the list is Angela Hunking. Angela, you have 5 minutes.
Councillors, Mayor Sue, I'd like to thank you for hearing me today. Last year, I came before you with a small group of people in the hopes of utilizing a field in Shallow Lake with the introduction of Georgian Bluff's first ever dog park. This is an amazing opportunity to not only effectively utilize the space, but to help bring in traffic to our local businesses and to give people who are traveling for hours with their pets a destination. A place to get out of their car, let their dogs run while they stretch or sit at a picnic table and enjoy a sandwich from Amici's. We're not just talking about a fenced-in area for dogs to run. We're talking about a place for them to play, a place to socialize, a place for both dogs and their owners. Come take a walk with me and see our vision of this space, of not only enhancing the quality of our 4-legged fur babies, but also strengthening the bonds within our community. Our first ever dog park and play space. When you think of a dog park, what comes to mind? Fenced-in area where dogs run and play, sniff and get to know each other, pee and poo while you sit on an uncomfortable bench or stand with other owners while watching your dogs do what they do best, socialize. So why can't we have fun and be social as well? Well, there's absolutely no reason, except no one has created a dog park that includes human interactions as well, at least not in this area. There are fenced in fields, absolutely, with a bench or two. There are jugs of water and maybe a few trees, but that's about it in any of the dog parks in our area. This is not our vision. This is not what we see for our dog park. Let me show you what we can have right in our backyard of Georgian Bluffs. We see large tires for dogs to climb and run through. A great place for the name of the dog park to be at the entrance. Several colorful climbing obstacles throughout the park. And just a side note, we've actually had someone offer to donate several of these to us already. To have 2 separate areas, options are always a good thing. The smaller dogs will have their own area to play and run. This will allow any small dog that feels intimidated by larger dogs feel safe, and vice versa. Because honestly, let's be serious, Chihuahuas, okay, I love them, I grew up with them, but they're very intimidating. Imagine a dog park that not only caters to our furry friends, but also becomes a focal point for our community interaction. Families traveling through our village could make a pit stop, let their dogs stretch their legs, and enjoy a moment of relaxation out of the car. If we take things one step further and make things interesting, a little bit different, like bone-shaped benches, then this will actually be a place to be remembered. Our village sees significant influx in visitors during the summer months. Thousands of people heading to Sauble Beach, Tobermory, Lions Head. and their cottages. This presents a unique opportunity to create a vibrant and welcoming space for both residents and visitors. The options are endless. When it comes to adding equipment and accessories to enhance the experience for both canines and humans alike, each year, as items become worn or damaged due to the weather, we can fundraise and replace them with bright new items to keep the park fresh. Paw print stones with the names of pups who get to enjoy the space would add a warm and fuzzy feeling for all that visit. It is our intention to have this destination park be an ever-evolving space, a place people look forward to meeting each other when they're in the area or when they have the day off. Thinking outside the box gives visitors and residents that fun surprise when they enter through the double gated entrance and are greeted by a dog treat vending machine or a repurposed gumball machine turned into every dog's dream, a tennis ball machine. This dog park brings with it the opportunity for Georgian Bluff residents to showcase our beautiful area, offer a space for people to walk or wheel around a pedestrian path sheltered by new trees, take a rest under a covered pavilion, or take photos for social media to spread the word. This space will be more than just a dog park. It'll be an interactive social play space. We've had many individuals and companies come to us wanting to donate. So we are here in the hopes of changing your mind and including the dog park in your 2024 budget. If this is still not a possibility, then give us the green light and the means to start accepting large donations with tax receipts, and we will spend 2024 fundraising and collecting these donations. Thank you for your time and consideration. We believe that supporting this initiative, we can create a lasting legacy for our community and our furry friends. Thank you, guys.
It's from Good. Good. Yep. All right. Thanks, Angela, for your comments. Next is Kyle Whittyfield. 5 minutes, Kyle.
Thank you. Good evening, council, staff members, public watching. Now, I spoke to Niall previously. He's answered a few questions, but I've already have this pre-read up, and maybe some of the public doesn't know some of the answers that Niall could fill in after. This meeting has discussed the budgetary impacts to the tax levy. In 2024 draft budget presentation, it notes that the water systems are a user pay and therefore do not affect the tax levy. Why then would you muddy the waters by repeatedly including the Potawatomi Village water supply project at an estimated cost of $1.25 million in 2025? Is it intended that the debt financing for the project ultimately be borne by the taxpayer? If not, then why confuse the issue by including it in the 2024 tax-dependent budget? Report Dev 2024 budget-C-02 by the treasurer noted that the estimated cost of the Potawatomi Village water project is $2.5 million, but specified no funding source. Instead, the report said it is likely the financial impact can be mitigated by some extent by connection fees, grants, and debt financing. How could this council approve a project with a price tag equivalent to 20% of the entire 2024 budget without a specific identified funding source? Why is there a need to spend such large dollars on a water system in the first place? Has it been deemed unsafe? No, according to Aqua's annual drinking water systems report, it is perfectly safe to drink. This is not a situation of unsafe water. Is this just an issue of the rich simply disliking the aesthetics of water? And I apologize. I do have a couple of friends who do live up there, so I apologize. Why wouldn't it be cheaper just for them to simply invest in treatment systems? If they can afford the local improvement, surely they can afford to install an iron filter or a water softener like the rest of us Georgian Bluff residents have to. How is it fair that the rest of the the residents of Georgian Bluff, that resources, financial or time and effort are diverted to such a select few? The council denied the request to include in the budget a fraction of that amount to make the route of dozens of school children attending Keppel Sarawak School safer by agreeing to upgrade or maintain the asphalt path that lies on a road allowance owned by the township. The budget request asked for $150,000 to refurbish 2 paths. The Keppel path is much shorter than the Presque Isle path, but let's say it's $75,000. $75,000 for dozens of children to get to and from school safely every day for the next 15 years or more. That sounds like a pretty good investment to me, especially since it's clear you won't be installing any sidewalks on 24th Street anytime soon. I ask you to reconsider the path that you're taking with this budget, and I thank you for your time.
So,
Well, I'm going to, through you, Chair Pringle, to our CAO. I think this presenter has asked a good question, and I think it was probably worthwhile, even though it's maybe been explained before, if we address it again. And that is the amount that's budgeted for the Potawatomi water system when it's to be a user pay system. The presenter is asking what part of that is user pay, what part is coming out of our general budget, and therefore impacting all of the ratepayers.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Thank you for the question, Councillor Coburn. And I was able to speak with Mr. Winfield just briefly before the meeting here, and you're quite correct. So around about 2.25 million, I think, is what we've allocated for the Potawatomi system works to be undertaken. None of that would impact the tax base, so none of it would be funded from the tax base, aside from a small portion of staff time to stick handle the work through. But the rest would come from user fees, grants if we're able to access them to support that work, and debt which would be financed against the long-term cost of the water system. So our water systems are generated to be self-financing, and that would be the principle that we'd be taking into this. We have allocated some funding from the Canada Community Benefit Fund. Building Fund, there we are. I've always known it as the gas tax, but it's not the gas tax. Everybody now knows it as the fund that was formerly known as the gas tax fund. But we have allocated some money from the gas tax fund, which is designed for these sorts of infrastructure projects and is a reliable source of funding coming into the township on an annualized basis.
So I'm just going to take you back to your comment about the grant. Is that a for sure thing, or is that something we're hoping for? That's the first question. The second question that I would ask is, so how much of it is financed through debt, and won't that be on the shoulders of the entire tax base?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and I'm absolutely convinced that Ms. Buchanan will weigh in on me on this one, but the intent would be none of it would be burdened by the tax base. So there'd be a connection fee cost which would go direct to the residents that benefit from the system. Any debt that was leveraged against that system would be payable by that system. It would not be payable by the general tax base. The CCBF, former gas tax fund, is fairly robust. It can be changed, but we have a fairly consistent and reliable income coming in from that. Other grants that we would explore would be provincial and provincial infrastructure grants. They're a little thin on the ground right now for systems like this, but we will continue to maintain our eyes on that landscape over the next 24 months as this project comes to fruition, to see if there are opportunities for grant programs that would support this level of infrastructure investment.
Not a follow-up, but a different question. So I don't recall, and I do, it may just be a memory issue, but I don't recall having the discussion about paving the path to Keppel Sarawak School. Did that occur at the strategic planning session? How much was the ask for that? And what was the rationale for taking that off as a budget item for this year?
So I see you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I may let your colleagues shine light further onto this, but there was a budget ask for multi-use trails, and as was indicated, that encompassed 2 multi-use trails, which are paved or have been paved surfaces. I think it would be exaggerating slightly to say the one that runs in off Findon Street is paved at this point. It was it shows evidence of having been paved in the past, but there's not much left of it now. And so there was a $150,000 ask for paving those 2 sections of multi-use trail. It was considered as part of the strategic session in the early December. I think, and I'll share this on behalf of your colleagues, there was good conversation. No project that was brought forward on December the 4th was considered to be not important. It was just a case of we can't do everything. And so that was one of the ones that fell to the bring it back another time when there's opportunity to. So it was not taken beyond the December 4th conversation.
Do I have a chance to follow up with
Sure.
that as well? So you guys have made great steps. You know, I've been working for the safety of Keppel since I've moved there in 2019. It took a while, but between yourselves and the city of Owen Sound, you both worked together to implement speed zones in there. And this is the final step to, I think at this point, what we could do to finalize the safety around there. And I've heard conversations of, and actually one of your staff made, I believe it was you, Councillor Day, that made a comment during the December 4th that was like, I wouldn't take it in that condition either. Like, thanks for to giving it to the school to take over. Now, I understand that you set a precedence as a township if you pave this and you have to maintain it, because then everybody who has a road allowance will want that set of standards. We're talking about a school here. This is a fairly active school. At the beginning of September, those queues on 24th Street run all the way back to Findon. I have offered to try and fundraise to try and have the maintenance done on it, because to ask the school to take over that, let's say they do take over that pathway, to have their caretakers come over across that field to maintain it for the safety of our kids is a big ask. I just think we're so close to getting it done that there should be some way that we can finish this off. If we've already put up we've done speed surveys, we've put up the speed, we've put up the speed limits there now. This pathway, I think, is important when you look at how many students travel down that 24th, how many vehicles still travel over 50 kilometers an hour, and it's not an option for the kids to enter that way. And no kid is going to go all the way around to the front. So I just ask you to look at that at this time. My other thing about the Potawatomi is, yes, you are using that gas tax to fund this, but where could that money be used elsewhere? We're talking about 25 residents that you've said in your report that the township is looking at doing all this work for, when it could be used elsewhere. And these are millionaires who live up there who could afford to get their water treated in some way on their own. Again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for listening to me. This is a very touchy subject when it comes to school children and safety, but I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate that. All right, no further questions for Kyle there. We're good. Okay, thank you. All right, our next speaker is Clark Schneider.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Mayor Carlton, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and all the councillors for this opportunity, and certainly the staff that are present and the residents that are here. Many of you will remember me from last council when I presented about 3 different times on trying to preserve the natural beauty of some of our very sensitive area in Georgian Bluffs for on the trails. I'm here tonight to talk about a similar but much wider ranging concern, and that is about climate action. I attended the 2 all candidates meetings and the meet to greet in Shallow Lake, and I was really pleased to hear all candidates at that time saying that climate change action was a priority for them. I became particularly happy when I saw the constitution of our current council that all of you had said that in the lead up to the election. But those were words, and words need to be followed by action. I know I don't have to convince any of you about the consequences and the costs of climate change. And it is here in Georgian Bluffs. 9 or 10 degrees temperatures in the middle of February? Are we talking to the farmers about their concerns about the lack of snowpack? How is that going to affect their crops? What about people who depend on wells? Are they worried about the lack of snowpack? These are the kinds of things that will be happening more and more. I have read that the bravest people are those in transition. Council is facing a time of major transition, and you need to be brave in your decisions. And I believe you're ready for it, because when I see a 9% plus increase in the budget, I know you're ready. Also, because you're correcting problems from previous councils, and I hope you will help future councils and residents with what your decisions are today and in the next number of weeks. I want to commend Mayor Carleton for her bravery in speaking the truth to residents of Georgian Bluffs, as recorded in the Sun-Times. She said that the taxes over the last number of years have been artificially kept too low. And it's been for many years because those councils deferred the needs of the township and its residents to future councils. And now you're having to face those. I quote from Mayor Carleton, "We should have put extra into reserves. In hindsight, it would have been the thing to do." Now, I've watched councils and I've watched the discussions around the budget, and I've been somewhat dismayed that climate change, climate action has not been more front and center. In some ways, it almost seemed absent at times. And I began to fear that the consultant's report on corporate climate action would be one of those unanimously approved, unanimously shelved, and there goes another expensive consultation report, not acted upon. But I'm here feeling optimistic. And I'm optimistic when I looked at the recommendation before you for this budget, the recommendation that reads, to allocate funding from the approved climate initiatives funding towards securing an environmental initiatives officer for a 3-year term. And that money be allocated to designate the work of climate initiatives as priorities. The work is in front of you. Georgian Bluffs dedicates staff and money to other priorities. We can think about planning. We can think about roads. We can think about facilities. Climate change initiatives must be seen as a similar priority, because climate change is going to affect every one of those other priorities in dramatic ways. I believe that you as a council understand the problem and you understand the need. What is needed now is bravery to take action, to take responsibility, and not to leave it to the future. I would like to think that in the next 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, none of you would like to have to face the residents of Georgian Bluffs and say, we should have, but we didn't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Clark, for your presentation and comments, sir. Any comments, Duncan? No, I see any. Thanks for that,
Okay.
Clark. All right, next on the agenda here is Stu Patterson. Welcome, Stu.
Hi there. It's an honor to take part in democracy in this manner. And this is for the mayor and members of council and Georgian Bluff staff. Thanks for doing all you do. And thanks for putting my picture on the calendar. So that was the picture of Skinner's Bluff. Yeah, me hanging out there. I didn't fall off, so it was good. And I wanted to say that I bring greetings from Oxenden, which is the neighborhood northwest section of the township. And I welcome our fellow Georgian Bluffians. So I'm here tonight to asking for some fairness when it comes to water billing customers in the Oxenden water zone of Georgian Bluffs. I did a very unscientific study, and I'm going to share it with you. And it's just to give you some thoughts, okay? The names are omitted to protect the innocent. Family number 1 in Georgian Bluffs. 2 people pay $320 every 2 months for Wyerton water. Family number 2. 2 people with 2 houses in Georgian Bluffs pay $500 every 2 months. Family number 3. 2 people in Georgian Bluffs on Elm Street getting the same water from Wyerton, but it's a different system. Okay, 2 people in Elm Street in Georgian Bluffs, the same water, different billing. They pay $208 every 2 months. So 208 compared to what Nancy and I pay, 320. Family number 4, 2 people in Wyerton pay $120 every 2 months for the same water. And that's the water part of their bill. They, of course, as you understand, have water in and water out, which we don't. Family number 5, 1 person in Wyerton pays $200 every 2 months, water in and out. And finally, one of our neighbors who lives alone in Georgian Bluffs, she pays $275 every 2 months. So what I'm asking for is that in your future budget considerations, please try for some fairness and some common sense when it comes to Oxenden water bills. Oxenden town water users are mostly pensioners living in fixed incomes. And I was born in Scotland, so as you know, Scottish people are very careful with their money. Robert Stewart is the name. So please try to negotiate a better deal for Oxenden folks when the water contract is renewed. And I don't know when that's happening. You guys know. Please try to keep us in your mind when your budget deliberations are underway. You have the big picture. We do not have it. So you guys are the decision makers. You understand what's going on. We're just paying them money every month. So good luck. Do the best you can. And thanks for allowing me to rant a little, but I'm not really ranting. I'm saying all this in a very friendly manner. Sue knows me. So there you go. You have any questions?
Thanks, Stu, for your comments, sir. Yeah. Council.
So through you, Chair Pringle, I think to our CAO, when does that contract renewal occur with the township of South Brisbane?
It's lucky I have an amazing team around me. I understand it's 2027.
So we're stuck with this till then. There's no way that you can equalize it for, I give you Elm Street versus us. It's just the other side of the airport. And there's quite a difference.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, to expand slightly on the 2027. So as was discussed, I think, when do we bring water rates? Was that December as well? As discussed in December, I think there are issues within our water rate system, and staff took the conversation from the discussion on water rates to heart, and will be bringing back a water rate study at some point. And so there is light on the horizon. I'm not going to make any promises as to what that light brings, but there is light on the horizon. We are definitely going to be looking at water rates, not just in Oxenden, but across the whole of the township. And I think I don't want to predict where that ends up, but there is work to be done on water rates.
Very good. If you just remember me for one word, fairness, that's all I'm asking for. Yes.
Yep, that's good.
He gets to really decide if I speak next.
Sorry.
No problem. I will remember you for your comments and also for your humor. So thank you for your presence tonight. I just wanted to let you know that when the Elm Street reconstruction and water work was being planned, the initial plan was to take money out of the Oxenden Water Reserve. And we decided as council to take the money out of a different reserve, of which I will not name, but the working capital one. So we do take fairness into consideration and wanting to make sure that the Oxenden money stays in Oxenden for repairs and Elm Street.
So
and all the different.
nobody sent me other than my spouse to this meeting, but we're just, I'm glad you listened and thank you very much.
Right. On behalf of council, I'd like to thank everyone. Sorry, I skipped the sign line here. Does council have any further comments regarding the 2024 draft budget?
So at the risk of someone throwing something at me, I do want to go back to the dog park for a moment. And this is a case of me needing more than a hot second to formulate a reasonable question. But one of their asks was, can we encourage them to go ahead with their fundraising and issue donation receipts? Is that something we do? Is that even possible as a municipality?
So through you, Deputy Mayor, when Shallow Lake Village Improvement was a committee of council, the township could issue donation receipts on their behalf. Right now that they are no longer a committee of council, I cannot. However, if it was an approved capital project, we can receive directed donations on their behalf that I would be able then to issue donation receipts. But as it is not at this time an approved capital project, I cannot issue donation receipts in the township's name.
So can we, I'm thinking out loud and I should never do that.
Deputy Mayor Pringle, I might give Councillor Coburn just a quick second to keep thinking while I add to Ms. Buchanan's comment. So we could get around that, I think, by creating a zero budget capital project. It could become a capital project without any funding in it. However, I'm gonna.
Yeah, don't look that way.
I'm not looking that way. It's all good. It's all good. But I will bring council back to some of the conversation that was held, which was around engagement and wanting to make sure this was the right park in the right place. If we were to do that, I think that the Shallow Lake Village Improvement Committee are looking to raise funds for a dog park in Shallow Lake. If we then went out and did an open-ended consultation engagement with community and they decided they needed it in Kemble instead of Shallow Lake, we're now in a bit of an awkward situation that they've been raising funds for a project which perhaps council wouldn't support at the end of the day. So I think fundamentally to the fundraising question, council has to decide whether or not they're going to be supportive of a dog park in Shallow Lake at some point in the future. Before we get to the potential around the fundraising piece. Unless there is a desire to bring the funding onto the table, we can take all of that outside of the budget conversation. It doesn't need to be part of the budget conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that makes perfect sense to me. So it sounds like that's a discussion after we've done some community consultation, because I do want to be supportive of their fundraising efforts. If in fact the community deems it to be a valuable project. So I have a number of questions forwarded to me with the ask that I present them now. Is that something is this the right time, Chair Pringle, to do that? It's about the budget.
Yep, I believe so. We're talking about budget. So ask your question. Councillor Day.
Before we leave this topic of communities fundraising, may I add one small question into it? Is that is that an option that could be considered for the Keppel Sarawak pathway as well, if the Keppel Sarawak school was interested in fundraising?
So through your chair, a school would be eligible to issue donation receipts, I believe, that they would be able to on their behalf, that it wouldn't need to go through the township.
So so through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, there's quite, because that project was parked in December, we haven't really advanced a great deal of thinking on it. And so we don't even know if this school is keen on a trail yet in that corner. So there is some work that needs to be done in terms of background work on that project. I think it would be difficult for me to bring back a comprehensive answer on the best way forward on that project this evening.
I haven't even gotten to my questions yet, Chair Pringle. Bear with me. I spent a long time on the phone today. So a couple of questions around two of our significantly large budget requests. These two have to do with the reconstruction of Old Beach Road and the drainage project on Balmy Beach Road. So the question from the ratepayer is, where is this money being spent specifically in terms of the drainage? Which sections of the road are being looked at? And where's the money going to be spent? Is it in consultant fees, studies, contract work? Similarly, do you want me to stop there? Or do you want me to go on to Balmy Beach Road? Do you want to deal with the drainage question first now?
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. The work that's planned as part of the Balmy Beach drainage work is up to 2.5 kilometers of new ditch and the replacement of dozens and dozens of driveway culverts and entry culverts. These are located on the inland side of Balmy Beach Road, which is the westernmost side of the road. And we've had, in response to concerns raised about drainage in that area, raised by residents in groups and residents individually along the length of Balmy Beach Road, we've had a good look at drainage in that area. And there is a topside ditch there, which is just not working right now. It's not working because some of the driveway culverts have collapsed. It's not working because people have landscaped the ditch out of existence, so there is no ditch in those areas, and so really it's a fairly significant body of work. That is a big piece of work, and so the intent behind the budget request would be a contract with a contractor to go out and to reinstigate that ditch. That would be done by external forces to us, and it would be done under the oversight of an engineer.
Thank you. I'll before I move on to the reconstruction of Old Beach Road, the same question will apply to both of these issues from a ratepayer. How do we know how much this is going to cost? Have we had it costed out specifically by engineers and experts, or are we just taking a stab at the amount needed?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, in both these two instances, we have had what we would consider to be a Class C or a Class D estimate undertaken by an engineer. So we have had engineers involved in providing information and input into these budget conversations. That is not detailed design at this stage. We probably have a better handle on costs for the reconstruction of Old Beach Drive than we do for the drainage work, which is more at the Class D end of the spectrum. When you get into those sorts of levels of estimates, there does need to be a fairly high contingency applied to the projects, pending getting into the detailed design stage of things. But we have had engineers provide advice to us in terms of both these two projects to help inform the budget deliberations.
Thank you. And then moving on to Old Beach Road, the question is, how will this road be fixed? Are we planning to build it up? The concern being that if we build it up, will that impact water and drainage in people's yards alongside that work?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, Old Beach is definitely a fairly complex roadway to do, because you have to be cautious about building it so that it is resistant to high water events that may occur in the future, although we don't have those right now, but doesn't become a berm which would withhold water from draining from the properties on the inland side of the lake. So definitely a project, again, as I say, we've already had some consultant time spent on this. It would be a full road reconstruction. So it's a full depth reconstruction. And the reason for that is the base of the road has failed. In addition to that, the culverts that are along that road and are causing significant surface discontinuity issues in some areas on that road require to be replaced, and they'll require the base of the road to be replaced in those locations as well. So it's a full reconstruction. We don't know the exact nature of that reconstruction at this point in time. We've used a granular and asphalt pad methodology at this point in time, but again, it's subject to detailed design. It would be the replacement of all those cross culverts. We'd also be seeking to work with residents who have shore wells down there. The first question would be whether they'd be interested in going on to municipal water. As discussed back at the end of last year, that is an option for residents down there. It would be at their cost. And so that would be a conversation with them as we go through the design phase. This would obviously be the right time to do it when we've got everything dug up to put the pipe in. But if residents don't wish to go on that, then we will work with residents to enable them time to update or replace any shore well lines they might have and look at suggestions. I think Councillor Winter was the one that suggested it in one of our earlier discussions around putting conduit under there so that any future shoreline well work wouldn't require a road cut to be undertaken on the new surface. So it would be a full depth reconstruction. One of the things that we have heard is that there are concerns about traffic and pedestrian impacts on that road. It's a heavily used recreational route as well. And so we want to explore that a little bit further. And there is certainly an opportunity for us to put in some pedestrianised infrastructure of some sort along that roadway if that's something the community feels would be beneficial in that area. But there's a lot of engagement and consultation and discussion to inform the future design of that road, but it would be a full reconstruction.
Okay, thank you. And the cost, you said, we have an idea because of the Class C estimates for that. The final question from ratepayers has to do with the bridges, which the reconstruction of the possible two bridges carries with it quite a hefty price tag. So the residents are asking, what is the impact of the state of the bridges currently to residents? How many residents are impacted by the bridges being closed and not repaired?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, just as a quick reminder for folks that are listening, we will be bringing back detailed design for these with better costing before council commits to the large capital sums that are required for both bridges. And we will also be bringing back strategies around how they might be funded. We will also, of course, be looking, as always, for infrastructure funding that might offset the tax cost, the tax impact of these two bridges. The Side Road 3 bridge is on a fairly isolated section of Side Road 3. Side Road 3 is not continuous from east to west. It's in chunks. This is a chunk between concession 11 and the town line. And there are two structures on that section. There's a bridge and there's a culvert. Both need work. The culvert's not currently closed. Side Road 3 bridge has been closed for a period of time. And the 50,000, which is currently in the budget for 2024, would enable us to do start the process towards an environmentalist impact assessment to try and understand what things we need to consider in terms of a future design for this bridge. We would bring that back with options, and there would be options at the end of that report, which would go from anything from not replacing the bridge at all to a full replacement, and the various different steps in between that, which could include weight restricted bridges, pre-engineered structures, and so on and so forth. We would wrap in that secondary structure as well, because we don't want to repair one structure. I need to have the other structure go down 2 years later. There are no residents that live on that section of Side Road 3. There are farms. It's actively farmed on both the north and the south side. And my understanding is that the farmers on both the north and the south side farm on both sides of the creek. And so Side Road 3 becomes an important link for them for agricultural operations, as it is essentially in the middle of those two farms, and allows for them to access the east and the west side of their farms, which are separated by the creek, with the bridge being the only crossing point. And so at this point in time, I understand both farms are impacted by the bridge being closed in terms of the ease of getting equipment on and off those fields. They're currently having to detour to Grey Road 16 to the south or Grey Road 5 to the north. So there's a detour they need to get to the other side of their farm field. So it does impact at least two agricultural operations at this point in time. The Emery Bridge, which we're a little bit further along the EA process in, given the directions from council last year. That one, I'm just checking my notes here. There are at least 11 residential properties which are served by two bridges over Indian Creek there, being the O'Reilly Bridge to the south and the Emery Bridge to the north. The Emery Bridge is currently closed. Everybody is having to use the O'Reilly Bridge to the south, which is in a good state of repair. It creates for basically anyone that lives on that side of Indian Creek there, it does create a bit of a detour for them if they want to head north. It's certainly quite a detour if you're on the dead end section of concession 14 there, and there are a couple of properties up there. It's quite the detour for those properties to get out and swing all the way around to get up to the north, because the Emery Bridge would be their most direct route. Those 11 properties it's always a factor in our minds where you have properties which only have one ability to get out. If we were to keep while Emery Bridge is closed, we do have a bit of an issue in that those 11 properties have one bridge through which they can only access their properties at this point in time. The other route that they could go out would be further along Keppel Sarawak town line, which stops at Churchside Road East or concession 14. There's another bridge which is no longer functional in that area. Indeed, that road hasn't been used as a road for a long time, so the base is in fairly poor condition. So a bit of a different circumstance there. The other thing with Emery Bridge is we understand there are a number of farmers that use Cavell Side Road, Churchside Road East and Keppel Sarawak Town Line as a detour to Grey Road 1, as an alternative route to Grey Road 1 for moving slow moving equipment. They don't want to put it onto Grey Road 1. And the Emery Bridge basically prevents that alternative north-south link. It's certainly not the most direct route in the world, but if you're trailering heavy equipment and you don't want to go on Grey Road 1, it does certainly provide an alternative option which isn't available at this point in time. So Emery Bridge definitely has more residents which are impacted and has a bigger impact on the agricultural community, I would say, than Side Road 3 at this time. As I say, both bridges will be coming back before council for full capital funding discussions when we get to the detailed estimate side.
Just to comment on the Side Road 3 there too, even though there is nobody living on the particular property or on that stretch of road through there, it is used by far more than just 2 agricultural areas there. There's probably half a dozen or 10 guys who use that road to take north, from the town line to over to concession 11. It takes those guys, and the biggest concern in my mind is the safety aspect at Grey Road 5, coming up with the lights there and turning and going around the bend. So today's equipment's gotten so much bigger and larger. In my mind, if we can alleviate those guys being on the main roads, better for us. But again, it's probably half of us there right now, and I'm really hoping that's an outside high limit on 1.5. I still can't get my head wrapped around that for them, but I'm looking forward to that report coming back to see where we can end up with those. So anyway, I'll comment on that. Further comments from anybody? Great. So on behalf of the council, thanks to everyone who registered to provide the comments. All right, recommendation reads, the council of the township of Georgian Bluffs hereby moves back into committee of the whole at 6:11 p.m. Need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Coburn, Councilor Sholes. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Just carried. All right, delegations, public question period, 8.1 items on the agenda. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. To register, it's www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 643. Item 10.2.1, CES 2024-001, Climate Action Initiatives, Budget Allocations 2024. And I'd like to welcome Roger Martin to the Climate Action Working Group. And Roger, you have 5 minutes. My order, sir. Thanks, Roger.
Oh, great. Okay.
Go ahead.
So good evening, Mayor Carlton, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and members of council. My name is Roger Martin. My wife, Virginia, and I have lived since June 2022 at the south end of Campbell Bypass in the off-grid house that Jenny and Luke Hoekstra built in 2019. And as you know, I speak this evening very briefly for the Climate Action Working Group, of which I'm the newest member, having joined just last year. I bring to the working group my 4 decades of experience as a manufacturer of truck bodies, during which our company helped develop 3 different types of electric delivery truck. I also bring my academic training in engineering and applied science. Our working group is very grateful for the motion that was passed by council on January 10th, directing us to work with Niall Lobley to make recommendations as to how best to use the resources of Georgian Bluffs to further the work of the corporate climate action plan. We met with Niall on January 15th, disappointed because it had to be virtual instead of in person, where we would have had some of Ann Schneider's muffins, but still we did it. There was a storm that day. The results of our work in that meeting are the recommendations in agenda item 12.2.1 on this evening's agenda. And I'll close these brief remarks with the observation that we made in our letter to council on this subject, which is dated February 1st. Georgian Bluffs is blessed with a rare combination of human resources that can help us succeed at the difficult challenge of meeting our climate change goals. Our mayor and our council, our new CAO and his staff, and the Climate Action Working Group all have the talent and the determination and the spirit of respectful cooperation that will be needed to get this job done. And the right environmental initiatives officer, as recommended, will enable our three teams, council, staff, and the Climate Action Working Group to work together even more effectively over the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation there, Roger. Comments? Thanks, Roger, for your presentation. 8.2, items not on the agenda. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item not on the agenda may make a written application to the clerk by the Thursday preceding the meeting they wish to speak at. To register, www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office 519-376-2729 extension 603. All right, on to correspondence. On 9.1, the Rotary Club request to waive ice time and committee room fees. Shallow Lake, comments from council. Councilor Clover.
I think we've done this in the past, and I would move that we grant their request to move to waive those fees for this fundraiser.
A second on that. Yes.
Second it, but I just note in the letter that they're saying they've already booked and paid for the ice. My apologies, gotta hit the right button. I would second it, but I'm noting that they've already booked and paid for the ice, so we'll be refunding them.
So typically they would not have paid for it until after the event. They may have paid a deposit, which would be refunded to them, but I don't have that information right in front of me. If I may, I also want to remind council of your donation policy that this would fall under, that if you are looking to waive the fees, if you could also waive your donation policy.
Do we know exactly what those rental fees are then?
I do not have it right in front of me, but if you waive the donation policy for the specific event and date, that will be sufficient to that. If you bear with me, I can see if I can find it in our system.
Sorry, is this the same process we use then for waiving the room rentals at Derby for the community group there? Okay.
Yes, Councilor Day.
I'm in favor of waiving the fees and also wonder if when the donation policy is revised, if this is a further topic that we should consider looking at in terms of a standard policy for when we waive fees. And there are many, I won't go into detail here, but.
So through you, it would be approximately $250 with tax.
Do you need us, Carly, to waive the donation policy first? Or how does that work?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Yes, so if we could do this as one motion, that would approve the waiving of the fees and then also waive the donation policy for this request.
Second, okay. So we still have the same mover for first and second, and I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, 9.2, Bruce County and Grey County Federations of Agriculture Annual Politicians Meeting Invitation. Questions or comments from anyone? Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would be interested in attending this, and Councillor Winters, who is away this evening, had also indicated he would like to attend that day.
I really learned a lot from the speaker last year and would appreciate the opportunity to attend again if that fits with our remuneration decisions.
I'm away. All right. Go ahead.
I'm just going to make it quick and say I am between night shifts on that day, but I would be interested in going. I just may not be able to commit the entire 9 to 3. Like I could probably do a little bit of it, but we'll see how long I can go. But I'd be interested. I would attend if that's okay.
Bit of a travel ahead of you there, but no, it's good. Good. All right. All right. So we got your, yes, Carly.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. So if there is compensation to be had for a councillor other than the mayor and yourself, a motion will need to be put on the floor authorizing that for attendance at that event.
I would so move that Councillor Schuldeis and Councillor Day and Councillor Winters be reimbursed for that day.
The move need a second. Schuldeis. Nobody's looking. Yeah. All right. So we have a mover and a seconder. We got I'll call the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay. Letter to council from Robin and Robert Curry. Parking lot concerns. Members of council wish to speak. Councillor Day.
I can speak, or I can simply move that we have staff look into placing the no parking signs near the driveway and back along the roadway as requested by the Bruce Trail representatives in the letter. And I can go into more detail in there if needed.
It's my turn to be rapidly searching now. Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, probably. For you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yep, thank you. We have a mover. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, I feel like I don't fully understand what we're saying. So when I read this, like I understand. So what we're saying is we're agreeing with the parking, posting parking, no parking. So are we kicking this problem 50 feet down the road is my question. Like what I think this is a great idea, but the people that come to walk at that site aren't going to say, oh, well, there's no parking here. I guess I just won't hike. But I think does this need to be coupled with something else other than just posting signs? And I hate to be the naysayer, but I think, well, I mean, the best example I can think of is Skinner's Bluff. So Skinner's Bluff is widely used and there's no parking. And so the farmer that had a problem there said, I'm going to post all these signs that say no parking. Well, that's great. People kept parking there. So then he took his tractor, picked up a car and set it on the other side of the fence and said, well, there was no parking there. So I think the people that are going there aren't going to see the no parking signs and leave, is all I'm saying. So I don't know that we've solved the problem by posting no parking signs. And if I'm the only one that thinks that, I'm okay with that.
No, good comments, Sir Councillor Thompson. I do believe Corporate Services, Brittany had a comment.
I just wanted to note that while you can give direction to post the signage means nothing without a bylaw to effect. that direction or that signage. So while staff can go away and look at the road and further investigate alternatives for parking, this matter will be before council at least once again through enactment of the bylaw and subsequently or prior to that, a staff report.
I believe the messaging from the Bruce Trail folks is that if the parking lot is full, you do need to move on, and people don't always practice that. But I would have to go back in time and the minutes to see exactly what I worded, how I worded my motion. If I could make a friendly amendment to my own motion, depending on what I said, I would like to see staff communicate with the Bruce Trail Association, or I think it's the association Bruce Trail Association to work on a solution for parking at that particular location.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, this one's actually an easy one because we're already doing it. We've been working with Ron, who's the Bruce Trail coordinator for some time on this one. There are a couple of solutions that we're looking into. The interesting thing is there is a parking lot just a short distance further along this road, which is owned and operated by an organisation, not us. And so South Bruce Peninsula ATV Club do have a parking lot about 500 or 600 metres further down the gravel road of Harold Sutherland. So we do have a parking lot. It's just that the parking lot's not where people want to park right now. And so working with the Bruce Trail, there are some options. We're looking into some potential options that would both alleviate the parking concern where it is a parking concern right now, move it to somewhere where it could be managed more appropriately, and would be supported by then a revised no parking area. But at this point in time, if council is happy to receive this for information, staff are working on it. They are aware there's an issue. It is a body of work that we're working.
You know, Councillor Thompson.
I should have waited for the motion because I think the motion, I was worried about the signs. The motion reads quite neatly. I think that satisfies it.
Okay, perfect. Good discussion. We'll take that for information. All right, next one is, let's start the new year by giving back. Join our walk for CNOY 2024. Comments from council. Questions, Councillor Day?
I just wanted to thank whoever on staff initiated this and started our team. It was a really wonderful thing to see within the municipality.
Okay.
All kudos goes to Haley Thompson.
Right. Well, everybody knows what's going on that one, so we'll go with the next one. Letter from the Jordan Bluffs Climate Action Working Group, Climate Action Initiatives, Budget Allocation 2024. Any further comments?
So I'm in favor of I would support what the letter is asking. I just have a question though about new FTEs for our CAO3 Chair Pringle. So this one is for a 3-year contract position for an FTE, Environmental Initiatives Officer. This is different though than the new project coordinator FTE, which is not time limited. Is that correct?
So your Deputy Mayor Pringle, correct. There's two FTE positions, which thus far are included within the budget of 2024. This would be an additional position. This would be, as indicated, a 3-year contract position.
You know, Fullers.
Do we have any indication as to what the starting salary for that position would be per year? How much are they paid?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, the way in which we put this into the budget is, I think we've budgeted it at about 90,000, including fringe. So we have some ancillary costs alongside from a salary that would be associated to this. It hasn't gone through a job evaluation process, which we would do in the process of putting together a job description and the advert.
Carly, we have a move, or do we need a seconder to? What question, Councillor Thompson?
I think that we have a really effective and dedicated team of the climate action team, and we've asked them to do some work for us, and part of that is reaching out to, you know, what can we do in our budget to support that work. So I think that this is good. So I'll give you as I was reading this, I was thinking in my work life, I'm often considering new positions. Do we add new positions? Do we take new positions away? This one feels a bit awkward because I don't really know what this person's going to do. And so we don't have a job description. I like the idea of saying, well, I do see some aspects of it is going to be searching for funds to support the position, but we pay an organization to do that too, through GrantWatch, which I'm not opposed to this. I think it's good. It's just interesting. And like you say, well, we've got an idea what we want to pay the person, but we don't really have a job description to base that thinking on. So I don't know. I mean, I think we really need to make the commitment. I was most discouraged when Mr. Schneider was talking about, his disappointment in the budget, but encouraged when he said he felt optimistic that this was the answer to the question. And that's good. I just think, well, maybe I'm not as smart because I don't know that it answers all the questions for me. I think if it is going to make the difference, great. It isn't reflected there. So I know that maybe sounds a little negative, but I don't know what the person's going to do.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I can maybe offer a little bit of an insight into that. We have two climate action plans that we're signatories to in one way, shape or form. We have a plan which is at the county level, Going Green and Grey, and we have a plan which is at the township level, our own corporate climate action plan. There are actions embedded within both of these, which are in essence the job description that would go for this. The sorts of tangible projects I see this person doing is some of the community education pieces that we've spoken about. That would be supporting some of the activities that GBCAT and the Climate Action Working Group have put forward for this year. So there's a greener homes tour that we want to do. There's ongoing work being done at a county level and at a local tier level around green development standards, which is something that this position would be able to lean in on. Some of the projects which were, and this is perhaps one of the pieces that came out from the conversation with the working group earlier on this year, as Mr. Schneider related to, there are some projects that were put forward as part of the initial request, which can be given to a staff member to do rather than a consultant to do. So this is some projects like looking at what our green fleet transition would look like is something which is now something that could be led by staff rather than an outside consultant. And certainly we have some expertise in the community, as you just heard, around this, and some really good conversations over the last few weeks on how we can lean into those conversations. So I think this staff person gains the capacity to lean in on those conversations. Some of the other things that we heard very strongly about as we went through the last round of consultation on the corporate climate action plan was around looking at nature-based solutions. And certainly I will look to our own plan, which speaks a little bit to that, but I will refer to the Grey County plan, which has extremely ambitious targets around things like tree planting. And so about a year ago, we heard around this table around the potential possibility of working in partnership with organizations like Grey Sauble Conservation Authority on something like a living snow fence program. So there are ways in which we can deliver our own objectives as well as look at working in partnership with having some dedicated time to be able to do that. And I think that's what this position would bring that currently we don't have in the organization. There is nobody in this organization who has dedicated time to look at environmental initiatives. To be absolutely honest, at the minute, it's a piece of work that's done off the side of the CAO's desk. And so when this exists as a side project to somebody's main job, it will never really gain the attention. And so the long-term objective of having a 3-year position is that it transitions us from this being a side of the desk project for staff to being something which is center of the desk in everything that we do. And that's why it's a 3-year position. The intent is that in 3 years' time, once these positions come in, we've had lots of enthusiasm, we've had lots of progress that's been made with this position. We've got all the plans in place to be able to embed climate action into every decision we make, and they've kickstarted a bunch of those projects which are in both the Grey County plan and our own plan that will not need this role. So we will grow to an organisation that doesn't need a dedicated role because it's everybody's role. So I think that's the best I can do. In terms of this one, I will briefly mention the grant piece. So Grant Match is a fantastic organization. There are a lot of grants that are rattling around at the $5,000 and $10,000 mark, which it doesn't make any sense for Grant Match to do. And so that's where this position really has some merit. And some of the projects that are included in that, in fact, there's been good conversation around it today. again, on the side of my desk, not on the main part of my desk, but on the side of my desk, there's been some really good conversation around tree planting grants, very small tree planting grants. There's interest at several sites across the township to replicate some of the tiny forest work that's been done. So this is the sort of person that can help coordinate that work, pull partners together to deliver projects on the ground. So that's really what this position would bring, is some capacity within the organization that currently doesn't exist to both move us forward and to be responsive to emerging opportunities that might arise from time to time.
Thanks, Al. Follow up there, Ryan?
That was good. So it sounds to me like you have a job description in mind. It just hasn't hit the paper yet. Thank you. I think when you do that, sorry, I said no and then I started talking. I think and you know this probably, but what's important to me then as we look at, as you're drawing that, when we look at this in 1 year and 2 year and 3 year, the question is, so how will we know we're having success? That's the key to a effort.
Thanks for the comments. Yes, Carly.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, before we move on from correspondence, I just thought I would draw council's attention to the fact that under 9.3, we had a mover on Councillor Day's suggested motion, no seconder, and no vote called. So I just didn't know if you wanted to rectify that before we move on.
Certainly do that. Seconded by Councillor Coburn. Can you read that recommendation? Will we vote on it? Where are we taking it back? We're going to throw it. Yeah, we had a motion on the floor originally, and then through conversation, it was decided they're already on the project. So we just need Councillor Day to withdraw the motion.
That's fine.
Formally withdraw the motion.
Okay. We're good to go now. Do we need a mover and a seconder for 9.5 though, the last one?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I believe further discussion on that item would be best addressed under the staff report that deals with the recommendations that letter is supporting.
Okay. Thank you. All right. On to staff reports. 10.1, development and infrastructures. 10.1.1, DEV 2024-004, Enbridge franchise agreement renewal. It reads as the council approved the form of draft bylaw and franchise agreement attached as Schedule A to the report and authorize the submission therefore to the Ontario Energy Board for approval pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchises Act, and that council requests that the Ontario Energy Board to issue an order declaring and directing that the assent to the municipal electors to the draft bylaw and franchise agreement attached as Schedule A to the report pertaining to the Corporation of Township of Georgian Bluffs is not necessary pursuant to the provisions of Section 9.4 of the Municipal Franchise Act, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the franchise agreement Schedule A to the report. Well, that was a tough one. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Schollies, Councillor Colburn. Who would like to speak to this? Our CEO.
I will keep my comments extraordinarily brief on this one. So you can thank Enbridge for the wording of that recommendation. It was not staff. So this is a fairly administrative process. It's basically a renewal of an agreement, an existing agreement we have with Enbridge to supply and maintain gas lines in the township. There were some good conversations around these at the Roma conference, and so we took learning at Roma and have applied it to looking over this one, and it is essentially more or less word for word the agreement that we've had in the past with Enbridge, and as I say, it's just an agreement to allow them to provide servicing across the municipality. To be honest, if we refuse to do this, they would get the OEB to issue an order to allow us to do it. So this is the friendly way of us doing it.
Now for live discussion from guests, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I understand that this feels quite required at the moment and is that makes sense, and I'm not here to say no, but I do have a question. I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't want to debate the merits of natural gas today. I also don't want to eliminate the debate for future councils. So I'm just curious about decommissioning, which was mentioned in the contract, and wanting to understand if we'd be breaking any aspect of the contract in the future if council and staff move to alternate sources of energy, which I realize it is a conversation for another day, but just making sure options exist in the future. And I maybe more, yeah, I'll stop there.
So through you, Councillor Day, there are things that municipalities have control over and there are things that we don't. What comes through the pipes is probably beyond our control at this point in time. Enbridge certainly do have ongoing conversations at a provincial level with the OEB in regards to their infrastructure and the future of their infrastructure, and it is definitely something that Enbridge are actively involved in. Indeed, you will have. That letter hasn't come up. Must be a letter that's going to be on one of the agendas coming up very soon, where you will see that conversation playing out. So I think at this point, this is the supply of those lines, and whatever Enbridge wishes to put through those lines. If Enbridge is putting an alternative fuel through those lines, such as renewable gas at some point, biogas, that would be something they could use that infrastructure for. So it's the supply of gas to homes, and we're just looking after the infrastructure at this point. If it comes to the point they need to retire it, then we deal with that when it comes.
I guess pursuant to Councillor Day's comments, because I can't think of any other word, are these terms and conditions, particularly the 20-year commitment standard across municipalities?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, yes, and they're agreed with at a principal level with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So AMO and Enbridge work these out on the benefit of municipalities and Enbridge.
Is that further questions? Not seeing any further questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Community Environmental Services 10.2.1 CES 2024-001 Climate Action Initiatives Budget Allocation 2024. Recommendation reads that pending approval of the 2024 budget, staff be directed to allocate funding from the approved climate initiatives, funding towards securing an environmental initiative officers for a 3-year term, and that council add an additional 45,000 to the climate initiatives budget to support this position, and that the projects included in the budget request corporate climate action plan implementations, that's double dip, be prioritized for the environmental initiatives officer to address, and that the new reserves be established to support the work of the township in addressing climate change, and that 25% of any operating surplus from 2023 be in subsequent years be placed in a new climate change reserve to fund initiatives directed by the corporate climate action plan, and then the environmental initiatives officer be directed to explore all relevant external funding opportunities to advance in Georgian Bluffs the works of the corporate climate action plan, committed to change in the county of Grey going green and gray, and that the environmental initiative officer be directed to work in partnership with the Grey County and its members municipalities and the communities in and around Georgian Bluffs to implement, contribute to educate and demonstrating leadership, climate change addressing actions. Need a mover and a seconder. A question, comment? I'll move for a second. Okay. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Colburn. That says turn over to the CEO for a brief comment. comment, Dave?
These really will be brief comments because we've had much of this conversation already. So thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. I'll just add that the groundwork for this was set through budget conversation last week in decoupling the 65,000, which is in the budget already, from specific projects. This would be enabling. This is basically what we'd like to use that funding for, rather than for being coupled specifically to those projects. The additional ask would allow for enough money to be in that budget to secure the position and maintain the food cycler project that has been part of the conversation so far. And the work in terms of bringing forward a specific reserve for this, we're looking for direction at this point. I should stress that this direction would come back, as has been noted. We are going to be bringing forward some reserve policy work as we go through this year, so there would be another opportunity to look at that as we go through that reserve policy work, and would be building using this direction as part of that work. So other than that, I would have had other comments, but we've had some fairly robust conversation on this one already, so I will leave it at that.
But Mr. Thompson.
I had a question. I think I understand the operating. So if we have operating surplus, moving that into a reserve is a really good idea. So I have two questions about that. My concern is if we don't have a reserve, or sorry, if we don't have a surplus, I still think we need to be mindful about a reserve. On the other side of that coin, sometimes I just want to be clear about the language. So I'm going to look right at you, because sometimes we may set aside $2 million from our budget for a project and not get to it for one reason or another. I just want to make sure we talk about that and say, oh, okay, well, if you're doing something like that, that doesn't count. So if we set, I don't know, pick a thing. You know, we picked to do a road. It's $2 million. We cost out the job and find out, oh, it's a ridiculous cost. We got to hold off on this year. We can't take 500 grand and slam that in.
Yes, so through your chair. So this is where for 2024, we are implementing that every capital project is being funded from our reserve.
Perfect.
That now any surplus that you will have at the end of the year would be your core surplus. So it would just be from operating. So we've eliminated that with how we have prepared the 2024 budget.
That's perfect.
Yep.
My questions were around the reserve as well, and I think it's likely been answered. I'm not entirely sure I have my head wrapped around this, but so the 25% is carved in stone? No. I'm not, the wording seems a little wishy-washy to me when we talk about these surplus at 25% from last year, 2023, and subsequent years. Do we just leave it open-ended like that typically for reserve funds? And then I had one other question.
So if I may, this will come up in a reserve and reserve fund policy. So I'm wondering if council maybe at this time would remove the and subsequent years, having that being reflected in your reserve and reserve fund policy. We are not eliminating that. I just want to make that clear. But yes, the percentage or the removing the subsequent years, you are all welcome to do that if that makes you feel a bit more comfortable around that wording.
I don't know that I feel uncomfortable. I'm just not sure if that's typically how we handle wording on motions that have to do with reserve funds. So I would turn to Councillor Thompson, who has way more experience than I do.
Oh, wow. Flattery that gets you everywhere. So good question. I had the same thought when I was thinking about this, but here's where I landed. Not to say that people should think how I do, but the reserve is just it's a reserve, like it's in our bank. So I mean, if we have a surplus, I was uncomfortable at first. I thought, oof, that's something new for us. But here was what I thought. When we put that reserve into our reserves, we can do whatever we want with it. So I thought what this does is mark a change in the way we do things, similar to what our our ratepayers talk about, having a temperature of +10 tomorrow is something new for us too. So I thought that it makes a statement about our commitment to contribute to that reserve. And then in subsequent years, I mean, this year we're looking at $45,000 towards a position. If we have a surplus and end up with that money in there, we're taking money from that reserve to apply to that. So I don't know if that gives, I don't know if that gives you any confidence, but that's how I imagined it for myself. Was I thought it's definitely a new way of doing business for us, but it does reflect a different way of us adapting to climate change. And I mean, if we have more operating surplus than we expected, that's great. We can put that in a reserve and we'll maybe draw less off operating because we put it in there. So I offer that. I don't know if that was the experience you were looking for.
It is, and so I wouldn't move that we change the wording then if there's a comfort level with the rest of my colleagues around that reserve fund. My other question, though, had to do with the latter part of that same sentence that says we would use that to fund initiatives directed by the corporate climate action plan. Why aren't we just saying the climate action plan? Because eventually we'll have a community action plan as well. Do we not want to use reserves to contribute to that body of work as well?
This one.
So sorry, if I may, as part of your reserve and reserve fund policy, that is where you can set your parameters as to what funds would go into that reserve and where those funds and what those funds could be used for. So that will come up with that as well.
I just think that this is very specifically saying the corporate climate action plan when we're going to have our own, hopefully, community climate action plan as well that deals with the community side. I don't know if the CAO has further comment.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I'd echo what Ms Buchanan has just said in that this will be coming back, and at this point in time, we only have one plan, so the wording is mute, so we can address it there. But recognizing we're having the conversation tonight, if we wanted to cross out the word corporate and simply substitute that with approved climate action plans, we do have two. We do have a community plan already at Grey County, and so it would allow us to use that reserve to lean in on that as well. So it wouldn't, as I say, I don't think it's absolutely essential to deal with it tonight. It will come up through the reserve policy, but if the intent was to have that conversation, I think removing the word corporate, substituting that with approved, just so that it has to come before you, be approved by you as a plan before it can access that reserve funding. That would capture, I think, the sentiment that you've related to.
Can I offer a friendly amendment then to that regard? Is that okay, Carly?
Second for that motion. Mr. Day. Before I get to the vote on that, Mayor Carlton, you had a comment?
I did. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question about do we have any idea what the 2023 surplus is looking like at this point?
Yes, so through you, I have not done any further investigating from January 30th, but in January 30th, we were estimating it at $1.6 million.
We do have an amendment on the floor, and we do have a mover and a seconder. Any comment? Good. Going to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. I'll go back to the main motion, which is amended. Any conversation on that? We have a mover and seconder. Call the vote on that. All those in favor? That is carried. Good. All right. Going to the next one. Corporate Services 10.3.1 COR 2024-005 Council Correspondence Policy. Recommendation reads that the report COR 2024-03 receive for information, and that policy COU 2024-01 Council Correspondence Policy be approved, and that the staff be directed to present a bylaw at the February 14, 2024 meeting for Council for adoption. Need a mover and seconder. Mayor Carlton, Councillor Day, and now I'll turn it over to our clerk, Carly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a few brief comments to highlight the draft policy that you have before you tonight. So this draft council correspondence policy applies to correspondence that's addressed to council committees or township boards, including correspondence that is intended for inclusion on an agenda and directed through the clerks or planning departments. The draft policy aims to provide greater clarity, consistency, and transparency around correspondence directed through council and council committee processes. This policy also aims to provide information to the public regarding applicable legislation with respect to the handling and disclosure of correspondence directed to council, and is informed by the best practices of existing policies and bylaws of other municipalities. It also provides formality around petitions directed to council. That was a comment that was had earlier in later last year. So this policy would ensure that petitions received are consistent and in an approved format for inclusion on agendas. This policy does not apply to correspondence directed to individual members of council where the intent for inclusion on an agenda is not expressed. However, as spoken to within the draft policy, if a member of council believes correspondence should be on an agenda for consideration of council, a member may, with the consent of the individual, forward the letter for inclusion on a council agenda by notice of motion, or alternatively, council may encourage the individual to write a letter to all of council for consideration on a future agenda in accordance with this draft policy and also with our existing procedure bylaw. I just want to take this opportunity to note also, if this policy is approved, I would suggest a slight amendment on page 3, paragraph 8. It currently reads, is subject to MFIPA, but I would change that to may be subject to MFIPA. So just a slight amendment there I wanted to highlight. That's all I have, and I would be happy to answer any questions if council has any.
I think this is a great policy to have. It's going to clarify a lot of questions we've had around this issue recently, particularly. I spent a little bit of time reading similar policies from other municipalities. And I have a couple of suggestions, and I'm not sure how my colleagues will feel about it, but I'm gonna throw them out there as not huge changes, but rather suggestions for change. Our draft policy that is before us looks to, I believe, the clerk in consultation with the CAO and the mayor to decide if an item is inappropriate or offensive in nature. I note that other similar policies leave that to the job of the clerk alone, and I'm just wondering if you have a legislated role. I think if our clerks typically have very good judgment, I'm not so sure if we need consultation on that with any member of council or maybe even the CAO. I fully feel confident in our clerks being able to do that themselves for efficiency. That's one suggestion.
Thank you. Any follow up for Carly or Bob? No problem. All right, good. Mayor Carlton.
So, and I spoke to our clerk about this earlier. My concern, I read this whole policy twice, and to me, thinking of it from a resident's viewpoint to read that policy, I'm not so sure it's very clear to the residents. We may all understand it because we're working with it all the time, but I don't think it's super clear to a resident to read that will they know how they're to contact anyone on council. So I did address this with the clerk, and I think she has a further response to that of how staff plan on handling that part of it.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes. So the covering staff report does suggest that staff are directed to place a digested version of this policy on a web page, which would include multiple scenarios and, just provide a little bit more guidance to members of the public who are looking to address council. So we would make this policy available in a simplified format on our webpage so that members of the public could easily determine where their correspondence should go.
Thank you. And I've seen examples of that on other websites where they break it down into 3 or 4 different headings with drop-down menus. And it's a good point that Mayor Carlton makes, that it does simplify it for folks rather than reading through tons of paragraphs of narrative. So the other part that caught my eye was about opening mail addressed to members of council. And one policy that I did read said something similar to what we have in this draft one, that that those ones will be open, date stamped, and distributed through the council mail bins. But some others say, have an added sentence that says members who do not wish this mail to be open shall advise the clerk in writing, wherein mail will be date stamped on the unopened envelope only and placed in the council mail bins. So I wonder if that is something council would like to consider. I guess the rationale for that suggestion is I think that sometimes ratepayers are hesitant to put things in writing, and if it's something that they don't want to broadcast to the entire world necessarily, I wonder if that might give them more confidence to send that on. Right. So that was just a suggestion.
Thank you for that. Further comments, Councillor Thompson?
Sure, I'm not sure I understand. I think you have a point. I just don't think I'm smart enough.
No, it's probably the way I explained it.
No.
So currently correspondence comes in, our clerk would open all of the envelopes, date stamp them, and put them in our respective mail bins. Some policies say that some members of council may not wish their mail to be opened up by a member of staff, in which case they can make that request. They would advise the clerk in writing, and it would be date stamped, I guess, on the unopened envelope, and that would be placed in your mail bin. So unopened for only the eyes of the council member that that letter was intended to be for.
I think I understand what you're saying. So we deal with this a little bit at work though too, but isn't that letter that they write you subject to disclosure? Like, I don't think, what I'm concerned about is, do we give the illusion that I'm sending this to Councillor Coburn because I only want her to see this, but it's publicly reportable? Like it's disclosable in a freedom of information. So this is one thing we have, this is a bit of a problem at my work also, where people have this illusion, if I send a letter to Ryan and Ryan looks at it, it's just for Ryan. It's a secret, but it's not. It's disclosable. So I'm not sure how to do. I'm not sure what to do. I understand what you're saying. It's not as easy as a trick, though. I think kind of not a trick. It's difficult.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, just to provide a bit of clarification. So if there is a letter that comes in and it's not addressed to all of council, we won't open it. And also within the existing policy, there is a provision that says if the constituent has marked that correspondence on the outside of the envelope as confidential, we will also not open it. So if it is the intent of that, if it is the intent of the author for it to be confidential, staff will note that, will date stamp the outside of it, and it will be placed in your council mail bins.
Yeah, I think that answers it entirely. Does that need to be captured in this new draft policy, or is it? And I've just missed it. Okay, thank you.
To expand on the clerk's comments, I do just want to add one tiny little asterisk to the confidentiality piece. Councillor Thompson is exactly correct. Every document that passes through this office is considered a publicly held document and therefore is subject to the disclosure provisions of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Personal Privacy Act. So I just wanted to provide that one little asterisk. While we will respect the confidentiality piece of the resident, it still remains a document of the township.
So, yes, and I think we all understand that, but how in mostly the correspondence comes in through emails, but in the event that it's a written letter, then when we see it, do we turn that back to the clerk for filing then? Is that how that works?
Yep. Councillor Day, you got a comment? Yep. Yeah.
So we may need to look at that process. So at this point in time, we leave that kind of up to you. What goes into your bins? If we ask you if you've had correspondence on something when we do a disclosure search, you are legally obligated to disclose that information back to the municipality at that point in time. So anything that goes into your bins, you do with as you see fit, but you have to deal with those documents as Councillor Thompson's indicated. They are discoverable documents. They are requestable public documents. And just for clarity, this is the same process. If staff get mail here, it gets opened and date stamped. It doesn't matter if they've got a bank statement which is coming here, it's getting opened and date stamped. That is now a record of the municipality, whether or not it complies to them. There are very, very few documents. And for any members of the public that might be watching just now, if you put confidential on your envelope, it does not mean that it is subject to any degree of confidentiality. That does not guarantee that that letter is not disclosed under a Freedom of Information request as a public record. So pretty much, with the exception of a very, very small handful, and it really is an incredibly small number of documents that come to this township, whether that be electronic, paper, or by any other means, are disclosable documents, and we have to give them up. Legally, we have to give them up.
Councillor Day.
I might need some training or a folder somewhere. There's some for the documents that come in on actual paper, and some information about what to do at the end of term should we not decide to come back or not be reelected. I'm not sure I've ever been told what to do with all those documents. My apologies if I have been told and I don't remember.
For you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I just wanted to also note for the committee that there's a lot of records management work that's going on behind the scenes in 2024, and just noting that there will be subsequent policies and education for council on how to handle the records that are in their possession. So no worries about not knowing what to do with it right now. We'll certainly address that at some point in 2024.
Perfect. Well, that was going to be an easy conversation over that. Anyway, we do have a first motion on the floor to pass here. Any further discussion?
I would just like to make the motion that we amend the comment about withholding correspondence from the agenda being the job of the clerk and not the CAO/mayor, if that's agreeable.
Need a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson? We do have an amendment to the motion on the floor there now. We have a seconder. Further discussion? Further discussion? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Back to the main motion that is amended. We do have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Carried. Perfect. Thank you. All right, unfinished business. We have nil. New business. We have nil. Does any member wish to provide a notice of motion? Not seeing any. Closed session, we have nil. Date of our next regular meeting is February 14th, 2024 at 5 p.m. If there is no further business, I will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. Oh, Councillor Day, can I head you?
Very quickly, if I may just wish those who celebrate a happy Lunar New Year. There are celebrations at the Grey Roots Museum this weekend and many other things happening at local businesses and organizations.
All right, no further business. I'll now call for an adjournment of the meeting. Mover and seconder, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Day. Discussion. All the vote, all those in favor? Here now adjourned. Thank you.